Social media platforms. The hashtag is NewsHour. Joining me now is Dr. Barrack Muluka, a regular commentator right here, or contributor to our show NewsHour. And of course, tonight we're introducing Joshua Kiptoo, Nandi Speaker, Nandi County Speaker, sorry. He's also joining us via Zoom to speak about these topics. And gentlemen, thank you for coming. Let me go straight to this. Raila Odinga, that April Fool's Day prank does not sit well with you. Dr. Muluka, does it sit well with you and listening to the explanations that are trying to be given? And don't forget, gentlemen, that today Junaid Mohammed says that they will have to convene NEC again to consider including him. My question to him was, is this by design or by default? First, it was a prank. Secondly, they said he has not said. Then thirdly, now they are reconsidering. Dr. Muluka, the position of Raila Odinga in the party right now.
ODM is Raila Odinga, and Raila Odinga is ODM, and there's no separating the two. The April 1 prank is that Joho and Oparanya, two governors in ODM, have been cast as if they could actually run against Raila Odinga and expect to win within ODM. That is the prank. But beyond that, one wants to begin wondering where it is that the decision to open up the instruments, the apparatus, so that Raila Odinga is considered for the race against those two is coming from. Has he, for example, written to the National Executive Committee to tell them that I would also like to run, and why have I been left out? Who is really pushing that agenda?
Okay.
Once we answer that, then we would know better. To put it very plainly, just to cut it to the chase, Raila Odinga is going to run.
Okay. Then why is ODM playing ping pong with the minds of their supporters?
Perhaps Raila Odinga has something in the pact that he reached with the president.
Okay.
And I need maybe to also be not so kind of extreme in and conclusive when I say that he is going to run. It is just possible that he probably reached a certain pact with the president. And maybe the announcement at the end of last month, start of this month, that he was going to run may have embarrassed the president, hence his backpedaling. I don't know.
Hold that thought. I'm coming back to you, Daktari. I need to sort something on your mic. But let me talk to Joshua Kiptoo. And you heard what Senior James Orengo had to say about this. My question is, why would they be playing with the minds of their supporters? Why is it something so difficult just for ODM to declare that Raila Odinga is indeed going to be in the ballot? Why is it so difficult? That's my question.
Okay, thank you so much, Ken Mijungu. I don't think it is difficult. As you are aware, if we can be able to look at our politics, the last 3-4 months before. The oomph or factor that you'd want to have to your voter would be 3-4 months to the election. Every time, if you look at the last elections, 07, 2013, 2017, formidable candidates are normally unveiled 2-3 months before. So that's why I would feel that they are not keen to to be able to raise and provide that he is the candidate. Number two, I think it is basically to try revive the fortunes of ODM, because the fortunes of ODM have dipped, and maybe to keep the two deputy party leaders more or less a bit confident that they are part of something. I want to agree with Barrack that when you define ODM, you define Raila Odinga. When you define Raila Odinga, you define ODM. They are one and the same person. So Joho and Oparanya are basically part of the party, yes, but only second to the one and only, and that is Raila Odinga. So what I feel is that trying to create such a platform where they show that, that we are open to new faces, it is basically try to revive the fortunes of ODM. Okay. Mostly, look at the two regions they are targeting, Western and Coast. Those regions appear to be slipping away. If you look at the two recent by-election, ODM lost both in Western and they also lost at the Coast. So having Joho at bay or keeping Joho close makes it a play that cost remains ODM, and trying to prop up Oparanya is basically to try to create a power base that can compete with the Wetangulas and the Mudavadis in the Western Kenya. So it's basically political power play. And that's why James Orengo will not have the guts to tell you, look, he's running. That's a fact.
That's why he would not have the guts. Tell me, your translation of that walk in town last week, Kiptoo. Why was it necessary for Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, to go to town and have that walk with Raila Odinga, the ODM leader, especially after a lot of meetings that were shrouded in a lot of secrecy?
And now, my interpretation to that is pretty simple. I think the intrigues and the talks that went around the last 2 weeks preceding that walk was that Raila was being hoodwinked, and it was coming out clear that he was the next in the chopping line after the deputy president.
Yes.
So ideally, it was pushing Raila to the deputy president's arm, and in this case, where the two would merge and become one political force. And I think it was not appearing well for the president.
Okay.
And I think if you look at the concept of handshake, the handshake has been mostly prided upon the two, that is the president and the former prime minister. And I feel the president felt that as a person or as an institution, they were losing the perception game, because all of a sudden the media and everyone was awash that they are possibly maybe an unlikely combination of the meeting of minds between the deputy president as well as the former prime minister. So I feel it was a way of placating such sentiments and try to cool down and to show people that handshake is ongoing. And if you remember, I want to be curious to hear about, if you look at the comments of ODM people a week before that, almost all of them were saying BBI is no longer a concern. Oparanya is on record saying that we don't have the time and the money to do the BBI. Obado, even Ojamong, who rarely comments and also said that BBI is not a priority.
Yes.
Worst of it all, Sifuna was on TV, that is the Secretary General of ODM, and said if there's any money that had been put for BBI, let's buy vaccines. So I just felt that it was a way of the president trying to manage and calm the fears, I think, of the ODM brigade, who I think were slowly coming to realization that the chess game is on, that the politics is not what we think we see. There's a lot to come. The play is still on.
And what you're forgetting that I'm going to ask Dr. Muluka here is the fact that Ruto, during that radio interview, actually mentioned one area that they agree with Raila Odinga. Dr. Muluka.
I've told you before, and I've told your viewers before, that when that time comes, there are no holds barred. All the politicians are going to talk to one another. And one of the things that we must not forget is that these things are happening in the wake of the emergence of what is called the One Kenya Alliance.
Yes.
And that One Kenya Alliance gives the impression that it has got the blessings of the president. And depending on whatever compact it is that obtains between the president and Raila Odinga, he would naturally be disturbed. Can you sort of allow Orengo to get off scot-free? You did not quite pin him down with regard to the pronouncements that he made in Nyanza about a month ago, and he was being understudied and seconded by Rarieda MP Amolo Otiende, when Orengo said that if anyone is trying to frustrate Raila Odinga, we are going to deal with them. They're not going to get away with it easily. If Raila Odinga had not reached an agreement with the president, there would be no country to talk about. And of course, Amolo Otiende drove the point home when he said that we can take this country back to where it was in January 2018. We must view these things in that context and understand that within the corridors of ODM, Raila Odinga is the man to watch.
Okay, very interesting. Kiptoo.
Yes.
Yeah, that context of the talks that they're about to come together with William Ruto, the deputy president, and before then Ruto had agreed with him on at least a point during that radio interview. And then we have these frustrations in the BBI. In fact, even as you answer that, when Oparanya, Ojamong and Obado spoke, but I want to concentrate on Oparanya and Ojamong, don't forget that first part of the question, is perhaps those frustrations when they addressed the issue of BBI not being a priority, it was not because they don't want it to be a priority, it's not because they want the vaccines to be bought or COVID to be addressed, because they didn't just wake up from slumber and realize there's COVID here, but it's because they were calling their bluff and telling them, why don't you continue that process? We are going away, we no longer care about it.
Now, the first question you've raised is about the context.
Yes.
And I agree with you that the context, there was nothing about the COVID or the vaccine. It's about politics. Mm-hmm. And I think it was about ODM power play, where they felt they were being slighted. Barrack Muluka has kept it well, that the One Kenya Alliance for the last 3 weeks were holding publicity and occupying every space, reminding everyone that they are the president's men, that they are the people are being propped by the system, and in this case, the president and his team. Now, what happens is that you have a case whereby the ODM team were trying to flex their muscle and try to show that we are there. We need to be remembered to be the people who are the equal partners. In fact, their game was to try completely whitewash the One Kenya Alliance, that the handshake is purely between the two so-called principals, that is the president and the former prime minister. When you bring the second question about the deputy president, yes, I think it was a question of more or less like opportunism, where when the journalists asked the deputy president, and I think the deputy president has been clear all along, that for him, going to 2022 election, it's a different ballgame altogether. We are going into the 22 elections not with a mindset about individuals, but with a mindset about ideas. And if you can see, he's already bolted out of the stables with an idea on the table, saying that if we can have a bottoms-up approach and where we can have like-minded people. And that is why it was convenient, for example, to say that would mean if there's an agreement on the question of the Kenyan situation and how to uplift the masses. And that is why he answered and said that he agrees with the former prime minister. He even mentioned clearly that one of the areas there's a meeting point between the two parties, that is the UDA and ODM, is that these are national parties. These are parties struggling to keep their imprint across the republic. And like the One Kenya Alliance, it is a cobbling up of regional parties. So that is why you could see similarities. And the deputy president, according to me, was just being pragmatic and more or less showing a bit of statesmanship, where he wants to show, because there's always the anticipation and feeling that the deputy president is hell-bent not to work with anyone. But by showing that he is able and open to work with the former prime minister, I think also that one rattled the other side, because that's why I feel the president didn't waste a chance and moved with speed to try +8 and be able to have the ODM wing being calm and quiet and don't feel neglected. So it's about the real game. And we need to pick that advice that, once it's bare knuckle, there's nothing to hold. And anyone can give a promise, anyone can give anything, but at the end of the day, in fact, the focus is on the ball. And it is basically who gets the nod of the presidency, but importantly, who is going to be his own person to win over the voters. And if I can use the same one, the deputy president is ahead by virtue of already going to the people directly. Then you have Raila Odinga and the rest, especially this One Kenya Alliance, almost seem to be keen to ensure they get the nod of the presidency. And for me, that is a handicap, because look at what happened. After just that talk, the president comes, meet Raila, the next thing they are walking in town. So I really pity Raila supporters, because the question would be, does it mean it will always be a question of boardroom negotiation and a talk here, there, and that is it?
Of course, it has to be that negotiations. The deputy president, no less, has told us they have to be on that table. Now, you would understand the anxiety, Joshua, wherever two enemies, not sworn enemies, but two political enemies support each other, you'd understand the anxiety. That's what accompanied those sentiments. But let me bring it to Dr. Muluka. Why must President Uhuru Kenyatta have Raila Odinga on his corner? Because that's the message that we did not hear. That's what they did not talk about. But that's the translation of the whole thing. Why must he always have, well, from 2018, why must he have Raila Odinga on his corner?
The starting point, Ken, for me is that 2018, the legitimacy of the president was in doubt. And we remember that the president went to a repeat election on the 26th of October 2017, and which was boycotted by the NASA partners. It doesn't matter that the president then went on to be elected by 90% of those who turned up. there's a fundamental issue of legitimacy that must be addressed. And on the basis of that, I do think, and I think with reason too, that the Deputy President William Ruto was traded in for Raila Odinga,
Okay.
and coming on board was not just the legitimation that the President desired so badly, but there was also the question of the tranquility that has come with that. President Uhuru Kenyatta has got the advantage today of functioning in a multi-party context in a manner that is, for all practical purposes and intents, a one-party situation. Today, Kenya is only a multi-party state or democracy in principle. In practice, we are a one-party state. And every president wants to have that kind of arrangement where you do not have anybody who is opposing you, at least not in any adverse or adversarial context. You are able to whip them in line. And every national CEO who understands where the fault lines are in every individual's resistance, every head of state who understands the point of least resistance in all his opponents enjoys that kind of untrammeled control of power. Okay. And we can see that with Raila Odinga properly and nicely in the stable, that President Uhuru Kenyatta goes on and gets the things that he wants. Of course, there's also the question of the BBI. I do not know where it's going to end up. But if I have listened to the president and heard him clearly, it is something that he would like to sail through. Okay. And he needs Odinga and the other people in the One Kenya Alliance to drive it home.
Kiptoo, same question. Why must he have Raila Odinga on his side, especially at this point? Because he has not... Yeah, proceed.
I think my understanding would be, you know, the whole foundation and the architect of Handshake was premised on the two being together. That is two serious antagonists in the past election coming together. And that messaging and that perception is what sustains the Handshake and the belief that they brought peace to this country post-election of 2017. And I feel the presidents would want that kind of stability and would want such kind of an atmosphere to see through his pet project. In fact, according to my understanding, I feel the BBI is more of a president's project than even Raila Odinga's project. The way he's been able to push it, the way he's been talking about it, and his ability to bend backwards to accommodate Raila Odinga. And for me, that was a measure when the other day, when all of a sudden seems his people were no longer keen to placate whatever the former prime minister, but for him, when it comes to him going out of his way to placate, get him back, talk to him, insist on doing that tour of work at the city, that shows how personal and important BBI is to the president. And that's why I would feel, according to him, for him to achieve the greater objective of BBI passage, you need to have Raila Odinga on your side. And be fair to the president, when it comes to the real politics, when it comes to real support base, I don't think One Kenya Alliance can be able to supplicate what Raila brings to the table. Okay. It is far-fetched. Okay. At the moment, I find the two existing power bases that you can call power bases is one by the deputy president and the other by the former prime minister. The One Kenya Alliance is trying to cobble something, but the power still lies with the two. Then the president now is more like the grandmaster, trying to play the chess game around and balancing interests to ensure now that the president has completely antagonized the deputy president, he cannot afford to open a different war front with the former prime minister. Automatically, again, despite the perception that the former prime minister and the deputy president seem not to be on the same side, remember in politics, your enemy is my enemy. So the moment our interests seem to be similar, nothing stops the two from working together. And that will present a nightmare to the president's agenda to finish with legacy and the whole thing about BBI.
Okay. And the other thing, just in 30 seconds on that, now that you've said it will present a nightmare, it's an unbeatable election if it was to go that way.
Not people necessarily, never say never. What I've been able to, in my small experience, and be able to see, never say never. But when you have a tag team of deputy president and the former prime minister, That is a formidable force, very formidable.
All
the
right.
only question would be, will Raila Odinga accept to deputize the deputy president?
Oh, yeah, big question right there that we cannot answer. Well, gentlemen, let me talk briefly about the alliances that we've seen being forged. I know I talked about what was in the front page of the Standard today, but just briefly on this because I want to discuss public debt also. Dr. Muluka, the alliances that are being forged, what are your thoughts? He tends to dismiss this as normal meetings, but we know there's something in the offing, especially if you look at the One Kenya Alliance and the way they've been speaking on the other side, and it looks as though they're not coming back to the fold.
That is how political speak, and that is how politicians do speak until such a time as they are ready to unveil what has been going on behind the scenes. I want to agree with the speaker there that the most challenging formation would easily be if Raila Odinga and the deputy president were to go together. It does not necessarily mean that they would sail home, but they would disturb their political waters quite thoroughly.
Okay.
I do not know also whether the former prime minister would be willing to deputize the DP. Political pragmatism would seem to dictate that he does so, because the DP cannot be a deputy president beyond the present term. But when you come to what Senator Orengo was denying today, and we know for sure that there was a meeting yesterday, we even know that another meeting was supposed to take place today, but it seems to have run into all manner of logistical and allied challenges.
Okay.
So it has taken place and they're trying to cobble something.
Okay.
It seems to be a rather desperate kind of effort. I don't know why it is being undertaken, and this is where my thinking departs from that of the speaker. You cannot dismiss the One Kenya Alliance. In the fullness of time, the people of this country are in the habit of falling back into their ethnic cocoons. You cannot rule that out, and by all looks, Ukambani, Kalonzo Musyoka is still calling the shots. It doesn't matter who else is there and whatever they are doing. If you go to Western, I think Mohisa Kitui is a stillbirth. You are going nowhere with that one. In the alliance, I have nothing against him. He's my brother from Western. We were with him as students at the University of Nairobi years ago, and we are good friends. But he knows this, and I've told him, and I would say it again. His is a stillbirth. If that is the one that you are embracing, you go back to the drawing boards. Mohisa Kitui has been absent. The last time he was elected to parliament, next year is going to be 20 years ago. 20 years. I would advise Mohisa Kitui to look at the Bible and read the book of Exodus, chapter 1, at verse 8, where it is said, "And there came to power a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing." Now that is the beginning of the trouble for the children of Israel.
Okay.
20 years, there has come to the electorate a new voter to whom Mohisa Kitui means nothing. So if that is the one you think you're going to work with, because 20 years ago, there are voters who are not even born.
Or even if they were born, they were not
And
born.
if they were born,
Yeah.
say if they were even 5 years, they would be 25, 27 years old, and next year 26 years old. They have no idea who you are talking about.
Okay.
And then when you look at the other three whom I saw on the paper, there was, of course, Raila, Orengo, and Professor Nyang' Nyong'o. That is what is called salami slicing. It is taking the same vote or the same person and cutting it into a number of slices and saying this is an alliance.
Okay.
Because that territory is so. I think that particular one is a sort of a scarecrow approach that will not take off.
All right, let's Kiptoo now gives a translation. He's spoken about the One Kenya Alliance. We're not going to go back to that. Now let's look at the alliance between Deputy President William Ruto and the hustlers. Do they have what it takes?
Alliance between the Deputy President and
the hustlers, because he says he has all the hustlers behind him.
But hustlers are basically his political base. And I think what the Deputy President is successfully doing is trying to break the barriers, trying to create an election that is based on agenda.
Okay.
Some may want to point at it as a class struggle, but I can guarantee you he's tapping into something where very few politicians in this history have tried. If I can go back through the memory lane, you'll find that the last time we had such kind of politics, you have J.M. Kariuki, who tried the same brand. You look at the KPU group for Jaramogi, Piogama Pinto and the rest, where they kept talking about, let's talk about the issues, let's talk about the forgotten man. If you remember Bildad Kagia, when he spoke about the landless, he spoke about that the people who fought for independence and never got the land. So I think the Deputy President is trying to re-engineer that conversation in a modern way by saying, yes, we've been in government, yes, we've had government, but the government that has mostly not been responsive to the poor and the forgotten. And according to him, by calling them hustlers, he says, people who genuinely can have a working system. I think it's a question of trying to be like Americanized in a way where we say, if you have a working system, anyone can pull themselves by the bootstraps. So that is the Kenyan version we are trying to do, where it's a question of, can we be able to speak the language of the common man? Not just the poor, but the common man. Because when you talk about the hustlers, it cuts across the social stratification. And that is what takes it away from being a class struggle. However, the point would be, the only drawback that he has to fight against is what Barrack Muluka has talked about, that our peculiar habits of retreating to our tribal cocoon. And in this case, I was not surprised with the results in Kabuchai. I was not surprised with the results in Machungu. I was not surprised with the results in Machakos senatorial. It just confirmed that that bit of our ethnic identification when it comes to politics is still strong.
Yes.
And because of that, the biggest challenge that the hustler movement will have to face is to break that glass ceiling. That can we be able to break the barrier where a Kenyan in Mombasa, a Kenyan in Machakos, a Kenyan in Kapsabet, or a Kenyan in Wasingishu can be able to reason under the same ideology map or flag, and like looking at themselves from their respective ethnic or regional affiliation. And that is what will be the fight. But so far so good, the Deputy President has been successful setting the agenda. For the last 15 years, it has always been the former Prime Minister setting the national agenda when it comes to politics or the presidential elections. This time, the Deputy President is in the driving seat.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to play the video of the week. We are also going to, I think we have the newspaper. I'll tell you the news for tomorrow. But when we come back from the video of the week, because this is James Orengo in his element, I'd want to talk briefly about a minute each on public debt and the response from IMF and what it means to Kenyans on social media with that petition on the new loan. Let's take a look at the video of the week.
To talk to my sister Nyaugenya, Honorable Beth Mugo. We have gone through the trenches with you. You know how, when governments are in power, how they behave. I think probably you can give people on the other side a little education. That sometimes revolutions eat their own children. Yes. Yeah. Government eats their own people. This government is going to punish you more than they will punish me. I'm telling you, in another 1 year, you will be crying in my office to come and represent you. I know, I can tell you. I've appeared for President Kibaki when he was in the opposition about laws which were made here. I've appeared for President Uhuru and Vice President Ruto when Kanu was going away.
All right, Senator James Orengo in his element, he was earlier here, and of course this interview will be repeated tomorrow if you missed it between 10 and 11. Gentlemen, away from that, let's continue the discussion. Kenyans on Twitter signed a petition petitioning IMF not to grant this loan. I'll begin with you, Speaker, just in about 1 minute. Your conclusion of the whole thing and today's response from IMF that, in fact, Kenya still has a space to even borrow 500 billion shillings.
Now, I think it's a very sad state of affairs. Number one, I don't think we should see IMF as a friend. It is very wrong for us to sit and think that IMF has the best interest of our country. I'm a young person. I don't think I was lucky enough to be able to witness and experience the SAPs of the late 80s and early 90s. Barrack Muluka will give a better story. And being a good storyteller, he'll tell you the true situation. But from the reading I've been able to see, I don't think it is something to celebrate about. Number two, which is the biggest concern, the complaint that Kenyans were raising, signing petition against IMF, it was nothing to do about how much we are borrowing, but rather it was, even if we are borrowing, what is it for? Ask me and tell me 249 billion have been borrowed in the name of fighting COVID, yet we've not put the money to buy a vaccine. We've not had the money. Look at what the counties were given. I'm speaking from a point of, as a county government, Nandi County received 118 million. Totally, all the counties were given 4.7 billion. And we are the ones given the task to be in charge of health as a function, both from the constitution and practically speaking, we should be on the front line. But out of the total money that the counties were able to receive is 4.7 billion. So that tells you 95% of the money remained national.
Yes.
Can they be able to account for the same money? Can we be able to say that as at the time we are facing a third wave, as a country we are better prepared and better placed? I don't think so. And if we can compare ourselves with our peers, start with Uganda. I wouldn't want to pick USA and European countries. Let me pick African countries. Uganda is doing much better than us. They have run an election. They have been able to contain, and even if you go to South Africa, which is more hard hit than Kenya, they prepared. Their prevalence rate of using vaccine is better. Can we speak about the same? And that is why the complaint to IMF was basically, don't give us, because that will be squandered. Okay. You have a government that is so obsessed with mega infrastructure, which has zero return. Let me give an example. Are you aware that we are spending more money to have SGR operating? That if it's even better to close down, no operations, and we save up to 16 billion of subsidy in order to make an SGR working. We have an SGR that was extended to Suswa, which is, as you remember, even you, the media, called it railway to nowhere, because no one can speak about it. So Can we talk about absorbing the same loans over and over again and there's nothing to speak about? Will we have a country to talk about for my generation, for my children's generation, and even for our grandchildren's generation? I don't think we are there. In fact, if you talk about legacy, and the president should take this carefully, the only legacy you'll be able to leave is that we got a country to Jubilee in 2013 that was working and was in an economic recovery. But as we speak, we are finishing the Jubilee term being a basket case when it comes to the economy.
Why, Speaker, you've really spoken. Thank you, Joshua Kiptoo. Barrack, you have about a minute 30 to conclude this for us. Did Kenyans online have a reason to sign that petition? And looking at the response of IMF, where are we left with this?
IMF, World Bank, the Bretton Woods institutions have their role to play for themselves. They have got their own interests, which they have pushed around the world right since the end of the Second World War, to spread capitalism for their own benefit. Their role as so-called international good Samaritans has been questioned very eloquently. Such scholars as Hancock's of Loads of Poverty publication, Naomi Klein of Disaster Capital, the Shock Doctrine, and others, Dambiza Moyo, Dead Aid, and many others. They are never our friends, as Speaker says. They have their own interests, and even when we have done very dismally with what they have given us in the past, provided that there is some blood left in us, they will make sure that they bleed us dry. Kenyans have got every cause to feel very concerned. Last year, some 193, perhaps even more, Kenya dollars, $1 billion came in. And we have sat here in this studio, Ken, and wondered about the people who just walk to Kemsand. They walk away with tenders worth billions of Kenya shillings. And Kenyans who are now jobless, who cannot feed their children, who cannot pay their mortgages, who cannot pay their bank loans, who have got challenges with their health care. They are seeing all these more funds coming in, and they must proceed on the basis of what they have seen in the past.
Okay.
And what they have seen in the past has been misuse of this money. And to make matters worse now, we are hearing that we are borrowing money so that we can use it to pay debts. We are digging a pit so that we can fill up another pit. What will happen to the new pit? We will have to borrow money again to fill it. And this is not sustainable. And that's why Kenyans are angry. And for those people who are in power, they should count themselves lucky, at least for the time being, that Kenyans are demonstrating online. They are not yet in the streets.
Okay. Well said, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Dr. Barrack Muluka. Always a pleasure having you on News Hour. Thank you, Joshua Kiptoo. Looking forward to seeing you once more or twice more on News Hour. Thank you for coming and sharing your perspective. And thank you for watching. Thanks to Damien Evans, our sign language interpreter tonight. And remember, tomorrow is Crossfire Thursday. My colleague Sophia Wanuna will be here. But enjoy the rest of our programming. Do I have a newspaper? No, we don't have the newspaper today. But make sure you grab your copy of the Standard tomorrow and enjoy the rest of our programming. My name is Ken Mijungu. Have a good night. Let's do this again next week. Same place, same time. God bless.